In the Ask Mixing with Mike section, I wanted to just quickly go over hearing depth and imaging in a mix. And this is something that um, can be affected by a lot of different things. One of the problems with hearing depth and imaging is usually the placement and setup of your speakers. Now, the thing is that when you have really good mixes, that depth and imaging will come across, but the room and the space in which you have your mix set up and how you're monitoring will have a great impact or effect on what's going on. So, for example, if we actually take a look at our speaker setup right here, and we separate it outside of a room, so forget that these walls exist. You have to place and get your speakers angled and set up and placed in the room properly so that the reflections that are coming off of the walls are minimized, particularly the side reflections, the reflection above, and the reflection off any like desk or anything that's right in front of you. Ideally, you want to have your speakers set up in such a way that you're symmetrical to the room, so that you're not closer to one side of the room versus the other side. You don't want to necessarily be in the middle, but you don't want to, dead center in the room. But you don't want to be up against the wall either with the speakers. Anytime anything sort of gets close to the speakers, it creates constructive and destructive interference, which is going to interfere with your ability to hear the depth and imaging. So when I set up speakers in a space, if I were going to a new space and I set them up, what I really listen for is not the frequency response and not the balance of the frequencies, but the quality of the imaging. How well do I really perceive the depth of the mix? And I set the speakers up and move them around and find the placement of the room until I hear that the clearest of the best. And once I get the best that I have there, then I can deal with the frequency responses by working with the crossovers and the level controls for the individual elements of my speakers. And if I have a sub, which I do, then I set my crossover point and kind of find the right placement and kind of phase align it and get everything kind of matched up and lined up together. And then I start to deal with any issues that there are in the room in terms of room modes, resonant frequencies that I want to get rid of, balancing the high frequency reflections and things like that, and the early reflections that come from the side. When you get this basic setup right, you should hear it should be very easy to hear a sense of depth in the mix. And this is something that can be difficult. If you're not able to set up something like this, then I would recommend working with headphones and then going to 112db.com and getting the Redline monitor set up. Because what this will do is it'll emulate a pair of speakers. It doesn't emulate the actual speakers, but it will give you the signal so that it takes the signal from the right side headphone and delays it and feeds it into the left, and takes the left signal and delays it and feeds it into the right. So when you're listening to the headphones, it gives you the comb filtering effect that you would normally have with the speakers without having the actual effect of the room in the headphones. And this, when you have this set up, then your ability to hear the depth perception all of a sudden opens up, because instead of the sound appearing like it's in the middle of your head, it actually comes out in front of your head a bit. And the idea is that the sound is actually coming towards you, not inside. And that's part of the problem with working with headphones. It's something that you have to listen to a lot of music on with the 112 dB thing turned on to get used to it, so you understand how to mix it. And once you calibrate it properly, then you really get that depth perception. But most of the problem with hearing the 3D sound field is the speaker setup, and the other part of it is how relaxed you are. It's sort of like one of those 3D images where you see like all these little dots and it just looks like a bunch of different colors and these tiny little dots. And when you sort of blur your eyes or look past it or try to focus on everything at once on the whole picture, then all of a sudden a 3D image pops out. And in a similar way, that's kind of what happens a bit with the 3D sound field at first. As you're trying to get used to it, if you keep trying to focus and make it happen, it doesn't happen. But if you just relax and sort of take in and feel the whole mix, all of a sudden it'll start opening up and you'll start to hear the depth because when you focus on one particular thing, then you start to exclude some of the other things, and it's everything together that creates the effect of the 3D sound field as you're working with it. So as you train your ears more, what'll happen is you'll get more refined in terms of your hearing capabilities, and then it'll be much easier for you to hear those 3D effects in the solo or in the context of a whole mix, listening through your speakers. And it will make it easier for you to perceive that out in the real world. The difference is basically feeling the music instead of listening to the music or hearing the music. So it's more of a feeling thing, not a technical thing, that helps to open up your ability to hear the 3D sound field. And that ability to switch back and forth between feeling your mix as opposed to listening to the technical aspects of your mix is a really important part of making your mixes go much quicker, because people feel music more than they listen to it. You know, nobody who's not an engineer listens and says, wow, what a great snare drum sound, unless they're a drummer, right? People, they just feel, it's like, wow, that's a great song. I love that song. And they don't care what it took to get there. They just like it. And that's really all that it is. Anyway, there's our quickie Ask Mixing with Mike, hearing depth and imaging in a mix.